Being trapped in an obscure place where you can't figure out any possible exit is an intense fear of many people. The idea of dying in confinement and isolation while you've been desperately struggling to walk out alive is truly horrifying. Today at Marvellous Videos, we have for you 20 trap movies that have the potential to paralyze even the bravest soul with fear and anxiety. Without further ado, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Now, this is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Merde.
The movie opens with a man waking up in a strange room containing 6 metal doors. He quickly falls victim to a deadly trap when he attempts to escape. Next, we meet 5 other individuals, Quentin, Renz, Worth, Levin, and Holloway, who find themselves in a similar predicament within the mysterious structure known as the Cube. As another trap kills one member, the group speculates on the purpose of the Cube, but their theories remain unsubstantiated. Levin theorizes that the rooms are dangerous based on prime-numbered coordinates, and they soon meet Kazan, a mentally challenged man who becomes part of their group. Worth reveals that he's the architect of the Cube, explaining that it was accidentally created and its original purpose has been lost. He calculates that the cube has 17,576 rooms and identifies a bridge room that could lead to an exit. Despite their efforts using Levin's calculations, they find no escape. Holloway attempts to cross using a rope made of clothing, but tragically falls to her death when the cube shakes. Afterward, tensions rise, leading Quentin to try to assault Levin, but Worth intervenes, and they abandon Quentin by pushing him into another room. Later, the group discovers Ren's corpse, indicating the rooms have been moving. Kazan realizes the powers of prime numbers trigger the traps. While calculating factors, they navigate toward the bridge, but Quentin returns and brutally attacks Levin, fatally injuring her. In the chaos, Worth manages to trap Quentin, resulting in Quentin's death as the bridge shifts. The film concludes with Kazan as the last survivor, emerging into the light, leaving the fate of the others ambiguous. The biggest horror element that the movie presents is not the trap situation, but the need to use complex mathematical formulas to overcome the trap. Hearing about coordinates and prime number factorization seemed to have terrified the viewers more than the brutish traps. But honestly, the movie's most terrifying part is Quentin's character, and what an absolute evil he is, especially when he reveals that he wanted to let go of Holloway's hand and kill her. Saw. The movie begins with an injured man named Adam waking up in a bathtub. With the lights turning on, he comes across Dr. Lawrence and realizes that the two have been trapped in an obsolete, large, abandoned, and dirty washroom. The two then see a man lying on the ground who's profusely bled to his death. They retrieve a recorder from a dead man and, hearing it, conclude that they've been trapped by a self-proclaimed vigilante who goes by the name Jigsaw. Jigsaw captures those people who either devalue their own lives or victimize other innocent people. Jigsaw never implicitly kills these people, but subjects them to sadistic psychological and physical torture, which they'd either survive or succumb to. The movie then runs in a flashback, where 2 detectives investigate Jigsaw's recent victims, Mark and Amanda. Amanda, who had earlier been a drug addict, happens to be the only surviving female victim. When investigators ask her to identify the kidnapper's face, she refuses, claiming that Jigsaw had rather been a blessing in disguise for her, as he helped her overcome her addiction. Back in the present, Dr. Lawrence receives a note that guides him to kill Adam and escape, but he refuses to do so. This is followed by a distressed phone call where Dr. Lawrence is informed that his family has been held captive, and if he wants to save them, he should hurry and finish his task. Meanwhile, in Dr. Lawrence's house, a man named Zepp tries to kill them, but is stopped by Detective Tapp. In the ensuing altercation, Zepp kills the detective and decides to shoot Dr. Lawrence, as, according to the rules, he should have killed Adam. Adam somehow manages to kill Zepp, and when the two try escaping, they realize that Zepp himself had been Jigsaw's victim. The movie ends with the bloody corpse that was lying on the washroom floor suddenly rising up and revealing itself to be Jigsaw, who had pretended to be dead to monitor the entire experiment. He reveals that since he'd been suffering from a terminal disease and was about to die soon, he wanted to punish those careless beings who didn't value their lives. John Kramer, aka Jigsaw, then leaves the two to die in oblivion. The movie's most horrific element is the climax, which is seeing a corpse rise up. The recurrent bloodshed also adds to the movie's horror quotient, and the trap, where people are made to undergo sadistic psychological and mental torture regimes, makes Saw one of the most unsettling trap movies. Panic Room. The movie is about a divorced mother, Meg, and her teenage daughter, Sarah, who have bought a luxurious multi-floored apartment at a giveaway price. The estate also has a bunker on the third floor designed to serve as a safe for the owner's tremendous wealth and provide safe refuge during a potential attack or crisis. One night, after the mother-daughter duo had settled in the house, some burglars led by the original owner's grandson break into the house in the hope of committing a heist to steal $3 million from the safe in the bunker. Realizing the presence of the thieves, Meg hides in the bunker along with her daughter. Meg tries to use the phone that has been attested in the bunker, only to realize it doesn't have connectivity. In the hope of trying to fool the thieves to scare them away, she announces from the mic inside the bunker to the intruders that she's informed the police, and they'll be arriving soon. The owner's grandson defuses these warnings, claiming that the telephone hasn't been connected yet, and thus Meg must surely be bluffing. The owner's grandson, Junior, tries to persuade Meg, claiming that if she lets them inside the bunker room, they'll take the money and leave without harming Meg or her daughter. Meg doesn't trust his words and refuses to open up the bunker room. The burglars try to break into the room by breaking the ceiling that leads to the bunker room, but it's all futile. Junior then devises a vicious plan of causing an explosion inside the room, but instead ends up burning his arm when Meg sets fire to the pipe. This infuriates Junior, and he wants to kill both the mother and daughter. Meg somehow manages to start the phone and calls her ex-husband, asking him to inform the police about their situation. Junior is then killed by one of the burglars when he reveals that there's tremendous wealth inside the bunker. He also injures Meg's ex-husband when he arrives to their aid. Toward the end of the movie, one of the burglars, Burnham, shoots the killer when he's about to kill Meg's daughter and then surrenders to the police. The movie's horror is best summarized by the idea of being captured or locked within an inbuilt bunker at an expansive estate from where you can't communicate with the outside world. Also, the thought of being at home with just your daughter or mother while some notorious burglars with murderous instincts have broken in is truly frightening.
Can't take this off my face.
Nice.
127 hours. The story revolves around a young mountain hiker named Aaron who falls and gets stuck in a canyon. He calls for help, but is met with no help. Aaron attempts to cut the rock with a knife, but fails, and after 25 hours, he records himself. After 48 hours, he tries to lift the rock but runs out of water and food. He dismembers his hand to free himself, but the knife's blade becomes blunt. One day, rainy weather fills the narrow passage between the mountains, and Aaron successfully lifts the rock. However, his escape is a dream. After being trapped for almost 5 days, Aaron begins hallucinating and engaging in strange behavior. He blames himself for not picking up his mother's phone call or informing her. He expresses his gratitude and love for his parents in front of the camera. After losing hope, he carves out, "Rest in peace, Aaron," on the rock, believing this was always his destiny. However, he experiences futuristic visions where he can see himself playing with a young child, possibly his son. This motivates him to leave the place and cuts off his arm. Using the backside of the blunt knife, he breaks the bones in his arm and finally frees himself. He's found by a hiker family who finally call for rescue. The movie concludes with Aaron with his wife and son in 2010, continuing to be an enthusiastic hiker, but being cautious about informing his loved ones about potential entrapping accidents. The aspect about the movie that sends chills down my spine is the fact that 127 Hours is a biographical survival drama film based on the true story of American mountaineer Aaron Ralston, who was indeed entrapped for almost 6 days in the Blue John Canyon in the Utah desert in the year 2004. Escape Room. Escape Room begins with 6 strangers who receive invitations to participate in an escape room experience that carries a cash prize of $10,000. The group includes Zoe, a college student, Ben, a war veteran, Amanda, a survivalist, Danny, who's a social media influencer, Mike, an affluent businessman, and Jason, a wealthy tech investor. Arriving at a mysterious building, they meet the game's facilitator. But shortly after entering the first room, they realize that they've been duped, as it's not a game, but rather a survival challenge that involves a life-or-death situation. The first room is a claustrophobic space with a deadly temperature drop. The group works together to find clues and solve puzzles, but the pressure increases as they struggle against the ticking clock. They barely escape, but are now terrified that their lives have turned into a terrifying nightmare. As they progress through each room, the challenges become more perilous. In one of the rooms, they must navigate through a toxic gas chamber, while in another, they face a situation where the room can stimulate fire. Each escape, as tensions rise, the personal secrets and hidden motives of each member unfolds. As members of the group fall victim to the traps, the survivors begin to suspect they're being manipulated and misdirected by the organizers yet again. They discover that the game is envisioned by a mysterious organization that capitalizes on the fear and trauma of its participants. The group learns they're not random victims, but have rather been shortlisted, as all of them have a burden of traumatic experience that would make their escape even more difficult. As the movie concludes, Zoe and Ben confront the organization's motives and attempt to escape the final room, which is the most dangerous yet. They manage to outsmart the traps and emerge alive, only to learn that their ordeal is far from over as the organization continues to operate. The film delves into themes of fear, trauma, and the human instinct for survival, which makes it a commendable psychological horror thrill watch. Even though Zoe and Ben make it out alive, the experience leaves them profoundly changed. The movie becomes an unsettling watch as every other trap gets more sinister and sadistic than the previous one, and the death of each member just keeps getting gruesome. The Mist. The movie begins in a small town after a violent storm. Artist David Drayton and his son Billy visit a grocery store to stock up on supplies for future disasters. They discover a mysterious mist enveloping the town, causing terrifying sounds and panic. A fundamentalist resident named Mrs. Carmody claims the mist is a punishment from God. A man claims to have witnessed something monstrous in the mist, leading to unrest among shoppers and shop owners. As tensions rise, David organizes a small group to confront the dangers of the mist. They venture outside to search for help and gather supplies, discovering more about the mysterious creature. The situation within the store escalates as people become extremely polarized. Some view Mrs. Comrody's methods as the only hope, while others, including David, strive to maintain a rational perspective. David confronts Mrs. Comrody, leading to a violent confrontation. As the mist shows no sign of evading, David and a few survivors risk a final escape in his car. They drive through the chaotic streets, facing deadly creatures. As the movie concludes, the group finds refuge in an abandoned vehicle. Realizing they could be trapped forever, David decides to mercy kill everyone, including his son. The mist clears, revealing military forces fighting the creatures, and David collapses in anguish. The film highlights the themes of despair, sacrifice, and the unpredictable nature of humanity when gripped with fear. It also reflects the frightening sight of superstitions and cult practices that prey on the desperation and fear of common people and have immense potential to divide a peaceful society. The movie's end explains how we, as humans, shouldn't give up hope of survival, even till the very end, as no one could predict what could unfold in the future. Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is a story about three young thieves, Rocky, Alex, and Money, who plan to rob a blind man's house in a desolate Detroit neighborhood. They discover that Norman Nordstrom, a war veteran, has received a large sum of money as a settlement from a lawsuit and plan to steal it. However, Norman returns home with heightened senses and exceptional survival skills, making him a dangerous adversary. The trio tries to escape, but Norman becomes increasingly dangerous as he systematically hunts them down. Money, in a desperate attempt for survival, is brutally killed by Norman. Rocky and Alex realize that they've been trapped in the house, and their quest for survival intensifies. Norman has been holding a young woman, Cindy, who allegedly killed Norman's daughter in a car accident, captive in his basement. Rocky and Alex attempt to open the storm cellar door, but Norman kills Cindy. Norman captures Rocky in the basement and tries to inseminate her artificially. He reveals that Cindy had been pregnant with his daughter's replacement, and if Rocky gives him a child, he would free her. At the end of the movie, Rocky and Alex manage to escape, but Norman shoots Alex dead and drags Rocky back into the house. Rocky escapes by disorienting him and hitting him repeatedly in the head. In the following days, Rocky learns about Norman's recovery in a hospital and how he killed two intruders in self-defense. The film leaves viewers with questions about morality, survival, and the consequences of desperation, solidifying its status as a gripping psychological horror thriller. The Hills Have Eyes. Retired Detective Big Bob Carter and his wife Ethel embark on a road trip with their three children, Lynn, Brenda, and Bobby, Lynn's husband Doug, their infant daughter Catherine, and two German shepherds. Beauty and Beast. After stopping at a gas station, an elderly attendant suggests a shortcut through the desert hills, claiming it'll save time. Things turn troublesome when the car's tires are punctured by a hidden spike strip, causing the car and trailer to crash. Bob and Doug decide to venture into the mountains in the hope of finding aid, while the rest of the family remains at the trailer. Beauty then suddenly escapes, and Bobby chases after her, only to discover her mutilated body in the hills. Horrified, he returns to the trailer but falls, knocking himself unconscious. He's then saved by a precarious girl, Ruby, as she protects him from her aggressive brother, Goggle. Meanwhile, Bob arrives back at the gas station, where he discovers the newspaper clippings elucidating about the mysterious disappearances in the area after the recent nuclear tests, which are also assumed to have mutated the local population. When Bob tries inquiring about this further with the gas station attendant, he commits suicide. Traumatized, Bob tries to escape in an abandoned car, but is captured by the mutant leader, Papa Jupiter. Doug returns to the trailer only to find devastation and the remains of previous victims in a massive crater. The mutants invade the trailer and assault Brenda and shoot Ethel and Lynn dead. Doug and Bobby resolve to rescue Catherine, who's been taken by the mutants. The next morning, Doug, with Beast, ventures into the hills and discovers an abandoned nuclear testing village. He's captured but manages to escape after learning about the mutants' origins. He fights and kills Pluto, another mutant, before confronting Lizard, who had previously killed Lynn and Ethel and was now about to kill Catherine. With Ruby's help, Doug saves his daughter Brenda, and Bobby sets a trap for Papa Jupiter and succeeds in fatally wounding him. The surviving family members, Doug, Bobby, Brenda, Catherine, and Beast, reunite. However, as they embrace, an unseen mutant watches them from a distance, hinting that their nightmare continues. The movie's more disturbing than horrifying. The thought of being lost on a treacherous and peculiar mountain trail and then being attacked by cannibalistic creatures is pretty much the worst nightmare anyone could fathom. The struggle for survival, along with seeing your loved ones in danger, adds to the trauma of the audience. Vivarium. The movie opens with a depiction of cuckoo brood parasitism and goes on to introduce Gemma, a primary school teacher, and her boyfriend Tom, a landscaper. The couple meets real estate agent Martin, who takes them to a suburban development called Yonder. They tour house number 9, and the agent inquires if they have children, to which Gemma replies, "No, not yet." After exploring the property, they discover Martin has eerily vanished. Attempts to leave the estate seem futile, as they repeatedly return to house number 9 until they run out of fuel and are forced to spend the night there. The following morning, their attempts to escape fail yet again. Fueled with frustration, Tom sets fire to the house, but upon waking they realize that the house has sustained, and they also find a box containing an infant and a note stating, "Raise the child and be released." Fast forwarding 98 days, the infant has grown to the size of a 10-year-old boy. Gemma insists that she's not the child's mother, while Tom refers to it as it. Tom becomes increasingly annoyed and starts digging a hole in the garden. When Tom locks the boy in their car, Gemma takes pity and releases him. The boy goes missing one day and returns with a book containing symbols and diagrams of humanoids. As the child grows, he strangely begins to resemble Tom, while Tom's health deteriorates. One day, while digging in the garden, Tom comes across a corpse in a vacuum bag. Eventually, the boy locks Gemma and Tom out, and Tom dies. The boy zips him into a vacuum bag and buries him in the hole. In a moment of desperation, Gemma attacks the boy with the pickaxe, prompting it to flee into a labyrinth beneath the sidewalk. Gemma follows and finds herself in other houses with more boys and dead strangers, where one seems to have committed suicide. Returning to number 9, Gemma learns from the boy that mothers die after raising their sons. She dies, is zipped into a vacuum bag, and the boy buries her next to Tom. The chapter ends with the boy visiting the real estate office, where an aged Martin dies and the boy adopts Martin's role, greeting a new couple as he did before, suggesting a chilling cycle of replacement. This is by far one of the most intriguing, suspense-ridden, and unique trapped horror movies. It leaves the audience at the cliffhanger to speculate who the boy could be and why all the people die. It combines the elements of science fiction and psychological horror, which makes it a worthwhile watch. The Descent. Following a thrilling whitewater rafting trip, Sarah, her husband Paul, and their daughter Jessica face tragedy when Paul is distracted during a car ride, leading to a crash that kills both him and Jessica. A year later, Sarah reunites with friends Juno, Beth, Sam, Rebecca, and newcomer Holly at a cabin in the Appalachian Mountains for yet another adventurous stride. They decide to hike to a cave entrance, but before they can pass through, the passage collapses, leaving them trapped. Juno then admits that she's led them into an unexplored cave system instead of the planned route, making rescue unlikely. Determined to find a way out, the group discovers old climbing gear and cave paintings, suggesting an exit. Holly presumes to have seen sunlight, and as she runs in that direction, she falls and injures her leg. As the others assist her, Sarah wanders off and encounters a pale humanoid creature drinking from a pool. The group later stumbles upon a den of bones and is violently attacked by creatures they call crawlers. Holly is killed when the crawler attacks and bites her throat. To protect Holly's body from being dragged away by the malicious creatures, Juno attacks them with an axe but accidentally strikes Beth. Traumatized, Juno flees, leaving Beth to die. Sarah wakes up in a terrifying den filled with carcasses, witnessing Holly's body being consumed by crawlers. Meanwhile, Juno discovers cave markings from prior explorers that could very well be indicating a potential escape route. She finds Sam and Rebecca, who deduces that the crawlers are blind and hunt by sound. Sarah encounters Beth, who reveals Juno's betrayal and the affair with Paul. In a moment of mercy, Sarah kills Beth, then confronts several crawlers, managing to slay them but becoming drenched in blood. Meanwhile, Juno, Sam and Rebecca face a horde of crawlers. Sam is then attacked and killed, followed by Rebecca, leaving Juno to escape alone. When Juno reunites with Sarah, she lies about Beth's fate. After a confrontation, she admits to her affair with Paul. Sarah strikes Juno and leaves her to face the crawlers. Sarah finally finds a way out, escaping to the surface and breaking down in tears in her car. However, she experiences a horrifying hallucination of a bloodied Juno. She wakes up back in the cave with a vision of her deceased daughter Jessica as the sounds of crawlers approach. This is a spine-chilling horror movie that not only combines the trapped women being preyed on by inexplicable, gross cannibalistic creatures, but also the element of betrayal and the loss of loved ones. The climax is terrifying, indicating that Sarah might be trapped in the cave amidst the crawlers and then faces the same fate as the rest of her friends. Frozen. The movie begins with Dan Walker, his girlfriend Parker O'Neill, and his best friend Joe Lynch visiting a ski resort for a final day on the slopes. On their last night, they persuade the ski lift operator to let them take one more run before the resort closes due to an incoming storm. After the first operator's duty ends, the new operator mistakes 3 other skiers for Dan, Parker, and Joe and shuts down the chairlift, leaving Dan, Parker, and Joe trapped high above the ground as they wait for rescue. A snowstorm sets in, but no aid arrives. Fearing that they might not be rescued in time, Dan makes a desperate decision to jump off the chair. He lands awkwardly, fracturing both of his legs, and he's unable to move. Parker and Joe, hopeless to save him, listen in horror as a pack of wolves arrives and hunts down Dan. The next morning, Joe attempts to escape by climbing onto the chairlift cable. The vibrations loosen the securing bolt of the chair, causing it to sway dangerously. Injuring his hands on the sharp cable, Joe manages to reach a nearby support tower and begins descending the service ladder. Once on the ground, he faces the wolves again, but fights them off with a ski pole. He promises Parker he'll return with help and uses her discarded snowboard to ride down the mountain. Meanwhile, Parker spends another night on the chairlift, growing anxious when Joe doesn't return by the next day. She decides to climb to the support pole for help, but the securing bolt of the chair comes loose as she stands, dropping the chair dangerously close to the ground. Parker jumps and the chair crashes onto her ankle as she lands safely. Injured but determined, Parker navigates down the mountain. Along the way, she encounters the wolves devouring Joe's body but manages to slip past them. Finally reaching a road, she stops a passing car and the driver takes her to a local hospital. The movie is absolutely nightmarish for people who are proactive about taking adventurous trips in the snow and the skylines. The idea of the equipment malfunctioning or people being trapped inside without other people's knowledge is truly frightening. This, when combined with the prospect of humans being attacked by wild animals, makes it one of the most horrifying trap scenarios. Cloverfield Lane. The movie is about Michelle, a young woman who leaves her apartment after a heated argument with her fiancé, Ben. While driving, she hears alarming news reports about blackouts in major cities. Suddenly, her car is struck off the road, rendering her unconscious. When she awakens, she finds herself in a bunker with an injured leg and chained. Her captor is an old man, Howard, who claims he saved her from the poisonous gas outside. However, Michelle remembers Howard's truck hitting her car. After attempting to escape, Michelle injures Howard, but is horrified when she sees a woman outside covered in lesions, who then bashes her head against the door. Howard claims he accidentally hit Michelle's car while trying to reach safety. Gradually, Michelle begins to trust him, even stitching up a cut she caused. They begin adapting to life underground, and Howard opens up about his late daughter. But it's later revealed that Howard's daughter instead left along with his wife. Determined to escape, Michelle starts designing a makeshift hazmat suit. When Howard discovers their plans, he threatens Michelle and his assistant Emmett with acid and ultimately shoots Emmett, declaring they can now be a family. Michelle, horrified, secretly completes her suit and flees. She manages to pour acid on Howard, disfiguring him and igniting a fire. Escaping the bunker, Michelle realizes the air is safe, but she sees a biomechanical alien craft nearby. The craft attacks her with green gas, but she survives by using her mask. As she drives away in a woman's car, a broadcast reveals a battle against the alien invaders, instructing survivors to seek refuge. Michelle heads toward Houston, determined to survive as a larger alien craft looms in the stormy sky. This movie is scary on two accounts. One, the thought of being captured in an oblivion underground bunker with a strange, creepy old man, and also about encountering a potential alien invasion after escaping. These two are the worst scenarios people would ever imagine together, and surviving these both could seem extremely challenging. Triangle. The movie is about Jess, who joins her friend Greg, his deckhand Victor, and other friends, Sally and Downey, along with Sally's friend Heather, to board Greg's boat at a harbor in Florida. While at sea, a storm hits, and Greg receives a distress signal from a woman claiming someone is killing everyone. The storm capsizes their boat, and they end up losing Heather in the ocean. The survivors manage to board a deserted ocean liner to take refuge. As they explore the ship, Jess feels a sense of déjà vu. When Jess returns to the dining room, the food has rotted, and Victor, now covered in blood, attacks her. After saving herself from him, Jess hears gunfire and follows it to a theater, where she discovers Greg, who's been shot dead. Sally and Downey accuse Jess of the murder, but they're killed by a masked shooter. The shooter warns her that she must kill to escape before falling overboard. Soon, a second group, including another Jess, arrives on their capsized boat. Jess tries to warn them, but mistakenly kills the second Victor. Determined to change the outcome, she arms herself with a shotgun. However, a third Jess, trapped in the loop, kills Greg and Downey from this new group before wounding Sally. As Jess chases Sally, she finds herself surrounded by multiple Sally corpses. The second Jess ultimately kills the shooter Jess, but the loop resets with yet another arrival of the original group. Desperate, Jess orchestrates the events from the first loop and disguises herself with a burlap bag. During the confrontation, she urges her counterpart to kill everyone, leading to her own expulsion overboard. Waking up ashore the same morning, Jess watches her past self angrily scolding Tommy, her autistic son. Vowing to change, she distracts her counterpart, kills her, and takes Tommy away. However, after a seagull crashes into their car, Jess realizes she's still trapped in the loop. In an attempt to escape, she crashes and ends up killing Tommy. As Jess stands at the accident scene, a bystander states nothing can bring him back. She rejoins Greg's boat, hoping that by repeating the loop, she might save her son. This movie explores the tenets of being trapped in a vicious cycle of events that seem real and unreal at the same time. In such situations, the entrapped individuals see no hope of escape, as they're unable to differentiate reality from illusion. Combined with the psychological trauma that falls upon the victims when they see themselves responsible for the death of their loved ones, this movie surely is a horrifying watch. Barbarian. The story begins with a young woman named Tess Marshall who arrives at a rental house in Detroit the night before an important job interview, only to discover that it's been double booked and occupied by a man named Keith. Feeling uneasy, but ultimately deciding to stay, she's disturbed during the night when she finds her bedroom door ajar, but notices Keith asleep, implying that he wouldn't have opened the door. After the interview, her colleague warns her about her neighborhood where she's apparently staying to be shady and unsafe. Tess then encounters a homeless man while returning home who starts chasing after her. Nervous, Tess accidentally locks herself in the basement, where she discovers a hidden corridor where she finds an obsolete room that has a bed with stains on the mattress, wall, and a camera stand. She informs about this to her roommate, and the two decide to explore it together once again, only for Keith to go missing. When Tess finds him, he's been severely injured in the tunnel. Their argument is interrupted by the terrifying appearance of a woman known as Mother, who brutally kills Keith by crushing his head into the wall. We're then introduced to AJ, the house's owner and an actor. who arrives to inspect the property amid legal troubles as one of his co-actors has accused him of sexually harassing her. He discovers the hidden tunnel and faces his own horrifying encounter with the mother. Flashbacks reveal the dark history of the house, including the original owner's crimes. Frank, who originally owned the house decades ago, was a serial killer who kidnapped and entrapped young women in the basement, sexually abused them repeatedly, sexually abused the offspring, and also recorded his heinous acts. Tess and AJ strike a plan to escape from the mother, but AJ betrays her, thus confining her to the basement. Toward the end of the movie, when Tess escapes and confronts AJ, he's killed by the creature, the mother. The mother tries to comfort Tess, but she unwillingly shoots the creature dead with Frank's old gun and leaves. The movie's more disturbing than horror on account of intergenerational incest and sexual violence by a serial sexual predator and killer. However, the scenes where the members have been trapped in the basement and tunnel unaware of what could follow do provide some good jump scares. Snowpiercer. In 2014, a failed climate change experiment led to a catastrophic ice age, forcing humanity to survive aboard the Snowpiercer, a self-sustaining train. 17 years later, the train's passengers are divided by class and economic status. Curtis Everett inspires revolt among the tail passengers. They free Namgung Min-soo, a security expert who agrees to help in exchange for his clairvoyant daughter, Yona. As the group moves toward the front, they face violent resistance from guards led by Minister Mason. The group travels through increasingly luxurious and high-class train cars and engages in combat with Franco, Mason's henchman. Amid the chaos, Namgoon reveals he intends to use a stash of crenol, an explosive drug, to escape the train with Yona. Curtis ultimately confronts Wilford, the train's reclusive owner, only to discover that his rebellion was projected to control the tail population. Wilford offers Curtis leadership, but Curtis refuses when he learns of Wilford's horrifying practices. A desperate battle ensues, leading to Curtis rescuing Timmy. As a bomb detonates, derailing the train, Curtis and Namgoon protect Yona and Timmy from the blast. In the aftermath, Yona and Timmy emerge from the wreckage to witness a polar bear, signaling the possibility of life beyond the confines of the train. The movie depicts the horror of climate change and what might possibly go wrong if there isn't enough mitigation at the right time. It also projects how easy it is to divide people over social constructs such as status and cause unrest pretty much anywhere. Maze Runner. A teen boy awakens in an underground elevator, emerging into the Glade, a grassy area surrounded by towering stone walls. Here, the Gladers have formed a basic society with designated roles, including runners who explore the surrounding maze. After a confrontation with Gally, Thomas recalls his name. Thomas soon faces danger when Ben, a runner stung by a griever, deadly biomechanical creatures that roam the maze at night, attacks him in a delirious state. Alongside Albie, the leader, and Minho, the bunner retraces Ben's steps and successfully lures a griever into a passage, crushing it. When a girl arrives in the elevator, she recognizes Thomas, but he doesn't remember her. Gally accuses Thomas of jeopardizing their fragile peace with the grievers and the Gladers and urges him to be punished. But Newt, the group's second-in-command, names Thomas a runner. Thomas, Minho, Frypan, Winston, and Zart venture into the maze to recover the griever's mechanical device. The girl, Teresa, arrives with 2 syringes of griever anti-venom, using one to save Albie from the sting. Gladers discover a laboratory filled with corpses, where Ava Page, a WCKD scientist, reveals the world was devastated by a solar flare and a deadly pandemic caused by the flare virus. Gally, after being stung, becomes despondent, insisting they'll never escape. In a tragic turn, Minho shoots Chuck, and the group is taken aboard a helicopter. Page declares the experiment a success and informs them that survivors will now enter Phase 2. The movie's dystopian science fiction plot, where it's survival of the fittest, is indeed very horrifying. The realization that one could be trapped till eternity in a place where one can't trust anyone is truly frightening. Crawl. Haley Keller, a University of Florida swimmer, is tasked with navigating a Category 5 hurricane when her father Dave's life is jeopardized by the storm. She disregards evacuation orders and drives to their old family home in Coral Lake, which is at risk of being flooded. Haley finds her father unconscious and is ambushed by alligators, who destroy her phone and injure her leg. Further chaos strikes when 3 people looting a nearby gas station are also devoured by alligators. Wayne, the Florida State Trooper, and his partner Pete arrive at the house, but Pete is brutally attacked and ripped apart by a swarm of alligators. Wayne is pulled into the crawl space and devoured underwater by an alligator. Haley swims to a storm drain where she discovers the alligators have made their nest and laid eggs. She kills an alligator with Wayne's gun and then swims out into the flooded street to save Dave from drowning. Haley, Dave, and Sugar, her family dog, make their way onto a boat outside as the hurricane moves over the neighborhood. However, floodwaters break nearby levees and crash them back into the house. As Dave and Sugar climb the stairs, an alligator bites off his right arm. Haley uses a discarded police radio to broadcast a distress signal to authorities, traps an alligator in the house bathroom, and attempts to flag down a rescue helicopter. Haley is attacked by another alligator who tries to kill her. She then stabs the alligator in the eye with a flare, and they reunite with her family on the roof. Haley lights a flare and flags it down, gazing upon her father in triumph and relief. This movie is going to give anyone who has a phobia of wild carnivorous animals sleepless nights. Being preyed alive by alligators is surely one of the most petrifying trapped horror story plots.
But a ringing phone has to be answered, doesn't it?
Phone Booth. The story is about Stuart Shepard, who is an arrogant and corrupt New York City publicist who's planning to foster an extramarital relationship with a client of his, Pamela, behind his wife Kelly's back. He uses a public phone booth to contact Pamela to avoid any suspicion by Kelly. During the call, he's interrupted by a pizza delivery man who attempts to deliver a free pizza. Stuart responds, but a man warns him not to leave the booth, threatening to tell Kelly about Pam. The caller claims to have killed 2 other callers previously who had refused to reveal the truth of their immoral acts to people they'd wronged. He asserts that Stuart must confess to Pamela and Kelly to avoid the same fate. To demonstrate the threat, the caller fires a suppressed sniper rifle with pinpoint accuracy. When Leon, a sex worker, breaks the glass side of the booth, grabs Stuart and hits him, the caller shoots Leon dead. The other fellow prostitutes blame Stuart, accusing him of having a gun. To defuse the situation, NYPD Captain Ed Ramey seals off the area and negotiates to make Stuart leave the booth, but Stuart refuses. The caller demands that Stuart tell Kelly the truth and orders him to choose between Kelly and Pam, and that the woman he doesn't choose is being shot. Stuart secretly uses his cell phone to call Kelly, allowing her to overhear his conversation. The police trace the payphone call to a nearby building, and Stuart warns the caller about this, to which the killer says that if caught, he'll kill Kelly. Desperate, Stuart grabs the handgun and leaves the booth, asking for the sniper to kill him instead. The police fire upon Stuart, while a SWAT team breaks into the room from where the caller operated, only to find a rifle and a dead man. Stuart regains consciousness and reconciles with Kelly. The movie ends with the real caller passing by, and thus warning Stuart that if he faults his integrity, the caller will return yet again. Buried. The movie begins in 2006 with an American civilian, Paul Conroy, waking up to find himself buried in a wooden coffin with only a Zippo lighter, pen, and BlackBerry phone. He recalls being attacked and kidnapped by terrorists and losing consciousness after being hit by a rock. He calls 911, the FBI, and his employer, and all of them are unwilling to help Paul out of this crisis. Paul then receives a call from his kidnapper, Kabir, demanding a ransom of $5 million or be left in the coffin to die. Paul finds a malfunctioning flashlight, glow stick, flask with alcohol, and pocket knife. The State Department connects him with Dan Brenner, head of the hostage working group, who assures Paul that they're working to find him. Brenner informs Paul that a man named Mark White was rescued from a similar situation 3 weeks prior and is now home safe with his family. Kabir calls Paul again and demands he film a ransom video, sending a photo of his colleague Pamela gagged with a gun to her head. Paul insists that no one will pay $5 million, so Kabir drops the amount to $1 million. Paul finds a live snake in the coffin, which he can drive away through a hole in the wooden crate side with a fire from the alcohol. After switching the language on the BlackBerry from Arabic to English, Paul finds the BlackBerry's number, which he relays to his wife in a voicemail. Distant explosions damage his coffin, causing it to slowly fill with sand. Paul's employer's legal counsel calls him to keep the situation contained, and his employer informs him that the explosions were F-16 bombings and that his kidnappers may have been killed. Paul begins to lose hope and makes a last will and testament in video form, leaving his wife his personal savings and his son his clothes. Brenner calls and tells Paul an insurgent has given details of where to find a man buried alive and that they're driving out to rescue him. Paul receives a tearful call from his wife, Linda, and as the sand continues to fill the coffin, Brenner calls and tells him that he and the rescue team have arrived at the burial site, only to realize it's the burial site of Mark White, the man they'd earlier rescued. The movie ends with Paul being suffocated as the sand fills the coffin and Brenner profusely apologizing. Being buried alive is one of the worst fears that could haunt the human mind and conscience, and that's what this movie capitalizes on. Every single passing minute, the audience is left gasping and crippled with anxiety. The movie's climax would effectively give you sleepless nights. Platform. Gareng, a prisoner in a tower-style holding facility, is assigned to a level 48 cell with his cellmate, Tremagasi. They're reassigned to a new level each month, with food arriving on a platform that lowers from level 0. Prisoners can only eat while the platform is stopped on their level and are subjected to fatal temperatures if they keep any food. The lower the level, the less food left on the platform. Gareng volunteers to spend 6 months in the facility in exchange for a diploma, as he wants to get rid of his smoking addiction, while Tremagasi transfers to serving a year-long sentence. After becoming friends, they're reshuffled to level 171, where Tremagasi plans to use Gareng's flesh to eat due to starvation. Gareng then kills Tremagasi to save himself, and he becomes haunted by hallucinations of Tremagasi. In the 3rd month, Gareng awakes on level 33 with a woman named Imaguri and her dog. Imaguri is an administration official who had interviewed Gareng before sending him to the pit. She tries to convince the pair below them to ration their food. One day, a woman named Miharu arrives injured on the platform, and Gareng and Imaguri nurse her back to health. Gareng tells Imaguri that Miharu has been desperately searching for a daughter, to which she replies that there are no children allowed in this place, and Miharu is instead an actor. She also reveals that there's about 200 levels here. The next day, Imaguri hangs herself to death, as she'd already been suffering from a terminal disease, thus leaving her body to be consumed by Gareng. In the 5th month, Gareng is assigned to level 6. His new cellmate, Baharat, attempts to climb to the levels above, deceiving him and almost dying. They estimate there are 250 levels and decide to ration the food to the lower levels such that everyone would have enough food. They attack protesters and hand out portions to the prisoners as the platform reaches the lower levels. Gareng and Baharat eventually reach level 333, where Gareng notices a young girl, presuming her to be Miharu's daughter. Gareng convinces Baharat to feed the young girl panna cotta, but Baharat instead gives her the dessert to eat. Gareng dreams of Baharat telling him that the girl is the message, and wakes up to find Baharat having bled to death. The child and an injured Gareng descend on the platform to the bottom of a dark pit, where he once again hallucinates Tremagasi. Tremagasi tells Gareng that his journey is over, but Gareng explains that he must bear the message. Tremagasi replies that the message requires no bearer. Gareng gets off the platform and the two walk away, watching as the child ascends. This was our list of the Trap movies that have been widely appreciated by the audience in the past decade. Do let us know in the comments section which one did you find to be most terrifying and what other movies could be included in the list. We'll soon be back with yet another marvelous video for you. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.